It's February. This is my 11th offseason. All right. I know how to generate content. This is trade time. And I'm thinking, who is the best trade candidate for the Niners? I settled on George Kittle. I think I made a really good argument. There are definitely good arguments against trading Kittle, but I think it's a hell of a discussion. What's interesting is how emotionally triggered this makes a lot of 49er fans who on Twitter, a lot of their responses like, hey, man, screw you. Like, not even a discussion. Screw you for saying this, and I hope Sports Illustrated fires you, and I hope, I hope all the worst things in life happen to you and nothing but you, and I hate your guts. So it's like, damn, man, like, you just want to go straight past the argument to this, which is funny. Also, there's a lot of analysts covering the Niners who are really fans, and they do their best to be analysts. But when this one comes up, their fan thing comes out, and they can't look past being a fan. And they say stuff to me like, I don't even know why we're having this discussion. Well, we're having this discussion because I started it, and people want to talk about it. And you joined in and got a bunch of engagement on Twitter and YouTube by just saying Grant is wrong. So you could just thank me for giving you something to talk about in February that's not Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm just saying. We're engaged in this dance together. But have you noticed how freaking emotional and how many fans don't even want to entertain this discussion?
Yeah. Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
I mean, I think when you're looking for a trade candidate, I think Nick Bosa was like right? Because for the longest you were on a Nick Bosa trade kick. But
hey, I still would trade him at some point, but the dude is 24. There's time. His trade value isn't going down anytime soon. My thing with Kittle is, let's say he has another year like last one where he plays 14 games, but he's hurt a lot of the time and has 800 yards. What's his trade value next year? That's my question. What is his trade value next year if this happens the third year in a row?
I think the Niners the fans have an emotional attachment issue with players. There's a lot of the people that are upset about your suggestion to trade Kittle are the same people that are upset about, when you talk about moving on from Jimmy. And
True.
It's just like you can't be. This is a business. You can't be emotional about things.
No.
It's just you were putting out there an idea. Crazier things have happened in the NFL, right? Like
the Niners traded Joe Montana.
Yeah,
and I said that they traded Craig and Lott. I was wrong. It was even colder than that. Back in the day, they had this thing called Plan B free agency, where you'd have a guy under contract, but you'd be like, you know what? You're unprotected. So if any team wants to sign you, you're gone. And that's what they did to Lott and Craig. They were like, we could have you for another year, but we're good. And the Raiders were like, oh, great, we'll take them. And they didn't do anything for the Raiders. The Niners missed the playoffs for a year, but that's cold. That's cold. Teams make cold decisions. They cut Jerry Rice. Cut him. Yeah, it's cold. They cut something cold to George Kittle.
I disagree with you about
how dare you?
The Niners should trade Kittle, but I don't think it's outrageous for you to suggest it though. Like, I'm not like, oh, shut that account down. Like,
to me, the whole discussion is based on, if you knew what would happen to George Kittle injury-wise in the future, you can make a right call. We don't know. I'm saying I'm probably betting on his injury trend to continue. Niner fans are saying it'll stop. Why? Because they're fans. Because you're emotional. You like George Kittle. You want him to bounce back. I mean, I think if George Kittle played for the Rams, Niner fans would be like, oh, he's on the downside of his career. We don't have to worry about George Kittle. He hasn't been good since 2019. I mean, that's what you would say. And that's all I'm trying to point out. Like, don't be a fan for a minute. Be quality control. If George Kittle was on the Seahawks, would you want him? Would you trade a first-round pick for George Kittle if he – No, you wouldn't do that. You'd be like, maybe 2 years ago. I don't know about now. That's all I'm saying. So, Niner fans, like, can you just – when you have this discussion, try not to be a fan for a minute or try not to speak straight out of emotion. Because all I hear on Twitter is, it's like, man, I didn't hear that. That was just emotion. What?
That's my quarterback.
How can you say that, man? What? George Kittle, I love that. I don't know, man.
Honestly, like, I know your suggestion was for Xavier Howard. Yeah. I don't even think Miami would do that. Cornerback is a top.
They're overinvested at corner. Yeah. They have really good corners. They need Kittle. They need a security blanket for Tua. They need someone to do for Tua what Kittle did for Jimmy. But it's a perfect trade after June 1.
But don't you think if Miami put Xavier Howard out there, don't you think they could get more than like what's Kittle's value versus what's Xavier Howard's? Like if I'm Miami, I'll trade Howard, get a first and a second or 2 firsts, whatever. Then I'll use that. I'll use a first. I'll just only use a first to get Kittle. Like I feel like there's better value there.
The late first at this point in his career.
Huh?
I think there was a time 2 years ago he's probably worth a top 10 pick. I don't think he's worth a top 25 pick anymore.
Who, Kittle?
Kittle.
Yeah, but the other part of it, when you're looking at all these players, right? Like when you're talking about these type of players, like in the top prime of their career, usually teams that trade for that are like teams that are trying to contend. So you're not getting like a top 10 pick. You're getting
Howard wants out. He's demanded a trade last year. New coach. The whole thing is trying to make Tua better. Howard doesn't help that. They're overinvested in the secondary. The Niners are underinvested in the secondary. Their salaries match up. After June 1, the dead cap hit is small for both teams. I think it's a win-win. I think it's a win-win because Miami would actually use Kittle. He didn't give him 20% of the targets until he got hurt. But he would actually use him.
Trade Kyle for Mike McDaniel and Stephen Howard.
I'm just saying, no, hold on. If there's a mass exodus of people who aren't all in on Trey Lance, then buddy, they just got rid of your They just got rid of your position coach. Okay. I'm just saying, hey man, don't be surprised if Kittle gets moved, unless he is all in with Trey Lance and we don't know it. If he's one of the malcontents and the Miami Dolphins want him, and I'm just saying,
yeah,
the Niners are very all in on people who want to be around Trey are here. People who don't can kick rocks. Peace. Whose side are you on, George? Whose side are you on?
Also, George Kittle has been like the one of the faces. Like if you were to have Jimmy as A, then George Kittle has been B as far as the face.
He was the face of the franchise in 18 and 19, in my opinion. 2 years. But now it's Deebo. Like, to me, there's nothing that George Kittle does other than block that Deebo can't do. So Kittle, great player, but you don't have anyone in the secondary who's an impact player. You got 2 impact players on your offense at receiver, essentially. Trade one. Trade the one who's older and more injury prone. Now, I know Deebo's injury prone too, and that's scary. It is. But he's also 26. I feel like you could keep him for a couple more years and trade him. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Deebo's a little scary too, I got to say. Right? I mean, he's Kittle like 2 years ago, but still,
They do have.
I think signing Kittle was the right move. If you trade him now, he hasn't lost any value, even though he's had two down years. If you trade him now, I mean, maybe he's lost a little value. 15 top 10 pick to a top 25. I don't know. I'm talking in circles, man.
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I don't think you're crazy for suggesting it. I just don't agree with it. But here nor there, I don't think it's fair.
How dare you not agree with me? How dare you? I require full agreement at all times. You don't understand that? Come on, we talk about bylaws.
You're never going to do a show with me again.
You're out. What are bylaws? And when I was in a fraternity in college, I used to always talk about that's against the bylaws. It's like, are those different than regular rules? Are they laws? Bylaws. Once you put that by in front of the law, I'm like, damn, I'm in trouble.
I'm a fan of the 49ers. I'm not a fan of individual players. Like, so, I mean, I want my team to be the best team possible. I don't want, like, I do want players to do well, but I'm a fan of the 49ers. I'm not a fan of like, oh yeah, go Kittle. But listen, if they can get anything, if they like what, so if a team offered 3 first-round picks for Kittle, like you're gonna, oh no way, like,
oh, so that one of them could be as good as Kittle, maybe? No thanks. No thanks. Like, first of all, I'm down to trade Kittle for a player. This is a team that wants to contend. Trade all pro for all pro. You don't need to have an all pro tight end to win a Super Bowl. You don't need to have George Kittle win I'm pretty sure that every team that's ever won a Super Bowl didn't have George Kittle. Ever. So I think the Niners could probably do it too. I just think that rather than having, a great tight end who's injury prone that you don't even use as much as you should, trade him for a corner that you desperately freaking need. The corner that you haven't had since Deion Sanders left. Honestly. I mean, ever since Parag got here in 2001, he's been telling the Niners, like, you don't need corners. You don't need interceptions. We just need tackler. No, you're wrong. Wrong. I saw Kelts, dude, who calls in on the weekend, Mr. Kelts, said, like, of the past 27 Super Bowl winners, like all but 4 had a Pro Bowler in their secondary that year. The Niners haven't had a Pro Bowler in their secondary in a long time. Was Verrett one? I don't know, but you know what I'm saying.
What you could do, Grant, I think if you're talking about the trading for Howard, right? If the more prudent thing to do in that situation would be
sign Gilmore.
Sit and wait. Like, what happens with disgruntled players come the fall, come early, or late summer, August? They get put on the market, and you get them for you get them super cheap. Like, what did they get?
Or you could just sign Gilmore, who would probably be cheap. He's older. He's 31.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's other alternatives to try to get, whether it's Howard or Gilmore. Like, you might be able to get Howard for like a second round pick.
True.
Would you rather have that and George Kittle?
No, let me come back to Kittle. This is why I want to trade. I want to trade him this offseason because I'm really afraid his value is going to tank after this. And Niner fans just won't listen to me on this. This is all I'm saying. If you want to listen to one thing about Kittle, this is it. He's had 2 injury-filled seasons in a row. His last 2 injuries have been serious and non-contact and lower leg injuries. After the first one, he came into training camp lighter and said he's trying to make adjustments so it doesn't happen again. Happened week 1. If it happens a 3rd year in a row, even if he plays 14 games, if he limps through the season, he will be looked at as old, injury-prone, downside of his career. And so if you could get a first-round pick for him this year, you're not getting a first-round pick for him next year when he's costing $16 million. I don't know what you would get. We talk about Jimmy's contract being an albatross. Kittle's a year away from being an albatross if he gets hurt again. And I know Niner fans are like, why would you assume that? Why would you assume injuries on people? Yeah, okay, fine. Why would you assume the trend will end? What is it about what you've seen from Kittle the last 2 years that makes you feel like, nah, man, these non-contact lower leg injuries are a thing of the past? He's got it. He made the adjustment.
He also has his shoulder, I believe, that he needs to get surgically repaired. And
freaks me out a little bit, man. Freaks me out a little bit. I'm not banking on that body to bounce back. I feel like it's starting to go. And if that's the case, that's an albatross in a year or two. Just like, because look at what happened with Jimmy, right? Jimmy had the good year. Should have traded him in 2019. Probably could have got a first-round pick for him. Niners were like, no. We'll do that in the future if it comes to it. Then he has a down year. Now that first-round pick goes down to a 3rd. Now it's like, oh, we can't trade him for a 3rd. We had a first-round. Let's rehabilitate his trade value. Played him for a year. Stays healthy. Now I don't even think he's going to be a 3rd for this dude. So every year goes on, the perception changes. That's my biggest concern with Kittle. And if you feel like he's going to bounce back, then you don't trade him. Of course. Of course. You don't.
I also think
he's going to bounce back, man.
I also think it's relevant to everything that we've been talking about before, which is Trey Lance. Because I want to make sure that this guy can be I want him as comfortable as possible.
That's true.
And having an all-pro tight end,
it's great. It makes it's the security blanket.
It's just and not only that, I think there's some things that you don't like. You're talking about
run game.
There's things that you don't necessarily see that Kittle affects. Kittle affects how defenses play the 49ers offense. Like, if you just put Charlie Warner out there, and I know he can block, but defenses aren't going to play him the same way. Like, so
what I would say is actually sign a replacement for Kittle. As opposed to having a $16 million starting tight end that you use as a 3rd option, get an $8 million starting tight end that you use as a 3rd option. And then mix in Dwelly and Werner when necessary. But that's what I would say. I don't know who that $8 million a year tight end is, but I wouldn't say start Werner. No. You don't need to create a hole in your offense. You can get a good starting tight end to replace Kittle and flip him for an impact player in your secondary. That, to me, is the smartest thing anyone's ever thought of, and it just so happened to be thought by me. It's amazing. I'm great. Let's end right there. All right, no. It's funny. No, look, I don't really care about changing Niner fans' minds. It's the offseason. This is all theoretical. I like taking an unpopular opinion, sticking my flag in the ground, and then coming back in a year and seeing what happens. Because usually I'm wrong, but when I'm right, man, that victory lap feels so good. And I feel like this is going to be a big victory lap for me because I feel like Niner fans are thinking with their emotions right here. Take a step back. If Kittle was on the Rams, what would you think of his 2022 would look like? I'll leave you with that. Trade 85, says Swan Song. Draft Trey McBride, have triple Trey. Oh, I don't even know who Trey McBride is. Who's that?
I don't know.
Sorry, Swan.